Okay, today we're going to talk about the Industrial Revolution. This will be a three-part series. First, we're going to talk about stuff that caused it, and then the effects, and then later some other pieces that came out of that. This is basically the time when, due to some great inventions, that mankind moves from having anything, the only power you had was either human muscle or animal muscle, to actually machine power. It's also known as the machine age. Okay, so some quick vocabulary. You're going to need to write these down. So an enclosure. This is the process of taking over and consolidating land formerly shared by peasant farmers. Then you have a factory, pretty obvious, an industrial site, usually consisting of buildings and machinery, or more commonly a complex having several buildings where workers manufacture goods or operate machines processing one product into another. Then there's a turnpike, which is a private road built by entrepreneurs who charge the toll for travelers to use them. And then urbanization, movement of people from rural areas to cities. That's a term you should recall from 8th grade. Utilitarianism, the idea that the goal of society should be to bring the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. Socialism, system in which the people as a whole rather than the private individuals own all property and operate all businesses. Communism is a form of socialism advocated by Karl Marx. According to Marx, class struggle was inevitable and would lead to the creation of a classless society in which all wealth and property would be owned by the community as a whole. And then you have the term proletariat, which is basically just the working class, the people who worked in all those factories. Okay. What causes the Industrial Revolution? Well, first you have what's known as the Commercial Revolution that takes place in the 1500s and the 1600s. Basically comes out of the demand for goods from abroad, from other places, the development of worldwide trade brought on by the opening of the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, and contact with other places, the tremendous wealth that was generated by all that. During this time, England really becomes the biggest sea power out there. They really control the seas, which leads to immense economic power for England. And then you have the policy of mercantilism, which again you should be familiar with from Mr. James's classes back in 7th grade. It's a policy in which a nation sought to export more than it imported in order to build its supply of gold and silver. Okay, the scientific revolution plays a role in this because the theories put forth in the 1500s and 1600s are put towards practical applications in the 1700s and 1800s. Huge technological advances occur and a lot of research is performed. Then you have the agricultural revolution, and don't confuse this with the Neolithic agricultural revolution. This is the next step. It's about 1750, most people still live in small villages, make their own clothing and tools. In the century that follows, dramatic changes take place in the ways people lived and worked. This movement away from rural life began with the Agrarian Revolution or the Agricultural Revolution, a change in the methods of farming. Okay, it begins with technology, and the Dutch lead the way with this. They build dikes or dams to protect their farmland from the sea and utilize fertilizer to improve the soil. The British discovered ways to produce more food also. A guy named Jethro Tull, who, if you're a classic rock fan, might know as a band, invented the seed drill, which planted seeds in rows. Okay, this is the first really mechanized farm machinery. Enclosure movement. Landowners found a new purpose for enclosure. Okay, they take over and they fence off land that had once been shared by peasant farmers. Okay, this kind of a common land. The purpose of the enclosure movement was to replace the many small strip farms with larger fields. Okay, they start moving towards bigger, more efficient farms. The practice made farming more efficient and it improves agricultural production. More food. Okay. They get rid of the three-field system that had developed in the Middle Ages and had been around for nearly 1,000 years. They instead use crop rotation. You don't plant the same crop in the same field over and over. People that didn't own land, people that farmed but were tenant farmers or rented land from the larger farmers, begin to move to cities. This Agrarian Revolution, because it increases food supply, leads to a rapid population growth. With a better diet, women had healthier and stronger babies. And in addition, improved medicine and sanitation helped people live longer. During the 1700s, Europe's population increased from 120 million to 190 million. So this is almost a 30 to 40% increase in population. Okay, some causes. Industrial Revolution was the period beginning around 1750 in which the means of production of goods shifted from hand tools to complex machines and human and animal power to steam power. During this period, technology developed rapidly and production increased. This brought many changes into people's lives. Okay, and here are some of the contributing factors. In the biggest place this takes place, at least the first place this takes place, is Great Britain. And one of the reasons it takes place there is geography. First of all, Britain's got plenty of iron ore and coal that you need for industrialization. And as an island, it's got lots of natural harbors for trade, and it's also protected from invasion. And then there's rivers crisscrossing Britain that make it easy for transportation, and they also provide power for factories. Population growth and change. Due to the Agrarian Revolution, there's a lot more workers available. Because of the Enclosure Movement, less of these people are farmers. So they move to the city, they can work in factories. Capital investment. Britain is making a lot of money on its overseas empire. As a result, they have the money to invest in mines, in railroads, in factories, and commercial and financial skills to manage the investment. They can buy the stuff they need to do this. And then finally, Britain experiences an energy revolution in the 1700s. Giant water wheels used to power new machines, but those are soon replaced with coal, which powers steam engines, which would become the important source for machines. So, before the Industrial Revolution, a lot of stuff went on. People made their living as farmers. People used simple hand tools. Most people never traveled beyond the village that they live in. They worked long hours. Children were working on the farms. People made their own clothes, they grew their own food, and most of the power came from animals, water mills, and windmills. Slow transportation by animals drawn by wagons and by foot. So stuff didn't go very far. Afterwards, people make their living in factories. Cities and towns grow up. People live in tenements. Factory workers work long hours. That's something that doesn't change. Children work in the mines and factories, so they move from farm to factory. City dwellers buy their clothes and food. They don't make them. Many factory products become available. Coal and steam provide new power sources. A whole slew of new inventions come about. And then you have faster transportation, which makes all of this work. Okay, train and steamship. Okay, the Industrial Revolution begins in England. I've already gone over quite a bit of this. Land, natural resources, transportation, access to the sea and raw materials. Labor force, because of the Enclosure Movement. Capital, they've got the money from their conquests and from their overseas territories. Markets, they have the largest empire on the planet. There's an old saying that the sun never set on the British Empire. So they had plenty of places to sell their goods, and they had the Navy and the merchant Navy to get it out there, and then the government was in favor of it. They had the mercantile attitude, and they also had a very laissez-faire or hands-off policy towards business. Okay, the revolution begins with the textile industry, with making of cloth. It's the first industry. They used cotton from the colonies, cheaper than lighter than wool. And it started as what's known as a cottage industry, with people making it home, but that can't keep up. So necessity becomes the mother of invention. People can't keep up with it, so they figure out how to make more. Okay, so some inventions that come along. The first one, 1760, called the flying shuttle. It doubles the speed of weaving. Okay, it's a machine. Spinning jenny allows you to use 8 spools of thread at once. Water frame, driven by water power, up to 300 spools of thread at once. So all of a sudden you're making much more fabric. By 1779 you have the spinning mule, which is an improvement on the water frame. 1785 you have the power loom. Again, increases the weaving speed. You can make more cloth faster. The cotton gin cleans the seeds from the cotton, makes cotton cheaper and more abundant. And then finally, cotton cloth from clothing was being made 200 times faster. In the course of 40 years, you improve the production and the speed of which it's made by over 200 times. Okay, just some examples of these. You see the flying shuttle, what these machines looked like. Okay, but most important machine of the time frame was the steam engine. And why was it so important? Because now you don't have to build your factory near water. You can build it anywhere. Okay, you have to have the water to create the steam, but you don't have to be on a river to power the machines. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, turn in tomorrow, 3 reasons the Industrial Revolution began in England. It should be a minimum of a paragraph per reason.